After the three goddesses created the world, ancient tribes settled on the wild terrains of the surface. Among these races were the Pirella, an aquatic squid-like creature that found its homeland in the waters surrounding and leading up to Lake Floria, an area that was governed by Farron the water dragon. The race lived in prosperity and peace until the entire world came under the imminent threat of Demise and his minions, which ultimately resulted in the goddess Hylia's hasty evacuation of the humans and the divine Triforce from the surface up to the sky. The Pirellas united their forces with the goddess and the other ancient surface tribes and took part in the decisive and victorious battle against Demise and his minions. After the war, peace returned to the surface, and the Pirellas continued to live under the Water Dragon's protection in Lake Floria. As a part of the Hero of the Sky's quest to enhance the Goddess Sword, he had to undertake the trial prepared by the gods in Farron Woods' Silent Realm to be granted a relic of Furor, the Water Dragon's scale. Link then headed for the lake in the province where he encountered Jelif, the leader of the Pirellas, who immediately led him to Farron the Water Dragon. After aiding the dragon and defeating the boss in the ancient cistern, Link later returned to a flooded Farron Woods, which shortly returned to its original state. In the ending of Skyward Sword, it is implied that the Skyloftians returned to the surface and over the course of the centuries established the Kingdom of Hyrule. Though the humans returned to the surface, it does not imply that they had any contact, since unlike the Gorons who lived in accessible sections of the surface, the Pirellas were well hidden in Farron Woods' underground water tunnels and unable to breathe outside of their natural element. In addition, their home consisted of a river that was only accessible for the ones wielding the dragon's scale.
As the next couple of centuries went by, the Pirella most likely evolved into the Zora people and civilization we know and love from Ocarina of Time. Hyrule Historia indicates that the Zora monarchy present in Ocarina of Time and its incumbent head of state, King Zora Debon XVI, is at least the 16th reigning monarch of the Zora kingdom. This implies that the Zora state and dynasty must have been established sometime after the events of Four Swords, but prior to the Hyrulean Civil War. The deity of the race and king's most trusted advisor, Lord Jabu Jabu, must have also been present at this point. With the alliance in place, the Zoras took the side of the Hylians in the Hyrulean Civil War. Though it is unknown whether the Zoras took part in any of the battles, or whether they just supported the Hylians and not Gorons, who have been referenced by Nintendo themselves to be bitter rivals in large parts of the timeline. The war raged and ravaged Hyrule for many years, until some decisive battles determined a victory for the Kingdom of Hyrule. The outcome of this conflict being the unification of the many kingdoms under one ruler and monarch, the King of Hyrule. Still, for the support in the war, it is likely that the Zora King and the Goron Patriarch were allowed to keep their titles, though their former territories outside Death Mountain and Zora's domain fell under the realm of the Hyrulean royal family.
The Hyrulean Civil War caused devastating losses for all factions and marked an end to the provincial states and self-governance in Hyrule. Nonetheless, the unified kingdom had barely shaken itself from the war when a new, much greater threat appeared, and a young hero from the woods would embark on a quest to salvage Hyrule from the King of Thieves, Ganondorf. After defeating the parasite within the Great Deku Tree and the King of the Dodongos, the hero was granted the spiritual stones of forest and fire and headed along Zora's River up to Zora's domain to meet King Zora Debon XVI for information regarding the last spiritual stone, the Zora Sapphire. Link soon after learned about Princess Ruto's whereabouts and that she had been swallowed by the Zora deity, Lord Jabu Jabu. Link headed back to deliver the message to the shocked King Zora, who referenced the unwanted visit from Ganondorf as a likely cause for the recent change of Lord Jabu Jabu's behavior, and ultimately asked Link to rescue the princess from the deity's belly. After offering a fish to the deity, Link made it inside Lord Jabu Jabu's belly and rescued the princess from Baronade's clutches. Impressed by Link's courage, Ruto felt a feeling of love for the young hero which in the end allowed to let free of the Zora Sapphire, as she saw this as an engagement ring with Link.
7 years passed until Link returned to the Zora Kingdom, just to find the domain and its king caught under a thick layer of ice. Lord Jabu Jabu was gone, and the now ice-cold Zora Fountain was dotted with unstable iceberg stepping stones leading to the ice cavern where Link collected the iron boots and blue flame to free King Zora from his captivity. As an expression of gratitude for this deed, the king granted Link the Zora Tunic. Link rushed to Lake Hylia and the Water Temple to break the curse cast on Zora's domain, just to find it nearly completely drained. With the help of the Zora Tunic and the Iron Boots, Link sunk to the temple's entrance and used the hookshot to gain access. Soon, he was reunited with Princess Ruto, who was both relieved and mad at Link. Relieved because the man of her life had returned, and mad because she thought he had left her for 7 years. But she did not have time to let her anger out, as she had to free the temple from the curse. In the end, it turned out the Zora Princess was the Sage of Water, and she informed Link that breaking the curse set by Ganondorf through Morpha would soon unfreeze Zora's domain. At this point, nothing is heard of the Zoras until after the final battle between the Hero of Time and Ganondorf, where the infamous timeline split was created depending on the following outcomes. A. The Hero of Time was victorious in defeating Ganondorf and sealing Ganon, was sent back to the past, and thus created 2 separate timelines, child and adult. B. The Hero of Time was defeated and killed by Ganondorf, and Ganon was sealed by Zelda and the 6 sages.
It is presumed that the imprisoning war broke out many years after the defeat of the Hero of Time, and where the 7 sages managed temporarily to seal Ganon in the Sacred Realm, which was poisoned by Ganon. Peace returned to the kingdom for a brief time, but Ganondorf's reign had exposed the entrance to the Sacred Realm, and with it, the location of the Triforce. Greedy individuals found its way to the corrupted realm, but were immediately upon entering it transformed into monsters, and included into Ganon's growing army. After Ganon deemed his forces strong enough, he unleashed an attack from the Sacred Realm on Hyrule. This incident marked the outbreak of the imprisoning war. The Zoras, being in the past a close ally to the Hylians, were likely fed up by the mistakes of the royal family, failing to keep evil sealed, and must have decided to not partake in the war. With this, the flourishing relation and alliance to the King of Hyrule and the Hylians met a swift end. Another reason could be increased pollution in Zora's domain, river, and other waters, resulting in a rather different reaction among the gentle Zoras. One group, including the king, became eventually seriously ill and had no other choice but to leave the war-filled Hyrule, while others were able to adapt as a result of evolution or mutation influenced by these new conditions. These individuals turned into River Zoras, who appointed a new monarch and dynasty. The remaining River Zoras turned their back to their former allies, the Hylians, and isolated themselves more and more as time went by, displaying a more vicious nature. This may be an explanation as to why they attack Link and see him as an intruder to their territory. However, there are some Zoras that are willing to cooperate, namely the monarch himself, King Zora. Link forced his way from Lake Hylia through Zora River up to Zora's waterfall and ultimately struck a business deal with King Zora, selling him the Zora's special flippers for 500 rupees. These allowed Link to swim through the deeper water sections, and as a bonus, the king allowed Link to use the whirlpool waterways.
Both the Sea Zoras and River Zoras appear in both of the Oracle games, though the Sea Zoras can only be found in Oracle of Ages Labrynna. In Oracle of Ages, both the vicious River Zoras and friendly Sea Zoras appeared in the land of Labrynna, where River Zoras could be found at Talus Peaks in both ages and Rolling Ridge Base in the past. The Sea Zoras, on the other hand, could only be found within the Zora Seas of Labrynna. When Link first gained access to the Zora Seas in the past, he was confronted by King Zora being seriously ill as a result of Varen's poisoning of the Zora Sea, and only a magic potion would save his majesty's life. One of the other Zoras state, "King Zora has no successor. If the illness continues and he passes on, we Zoras will lose our last king." The warning becomes the inconvenient truth in present time where King Zora is deceased. Link returned to the past to deliver the magic potion to cure King Zora, who immediately got better after consuming the medicine. Link then asked for permission to enter Lord Jabu Jabu. Unfortunately, the deity in past times was far too small to enter, which must mean that this is not the deity from Ocarina of Time, but rather his descendant. This would imply that Lord Jabu Jabu in Ocarina of Time must have survived and fled from Zora's fountain following Ganondorf's coup d'etat and invasion of the Sacred Realm. Link traveled back to the present, where he found King Zora healthy and alive, but was still not willing to allow Link to enter Jabu Jabu due to an illness caused by the polluted water. Upon cleansing the Zora Sea in the past, he was ultimately granted permission to enter Lord Jabu Jabu in present times.
A long time passed in Hyrule, but the Sea Zoras did not return, leaving the River Zoras to take over their position for good in the Downfall timeline. The Zoras found in Lake Hylia, Zora's River, and the Zora Waterfall are all vicious and see the hero as an intruder. Nonetheless, when approaching Zora's domain, it turns out several Zoras do not bear harsh feelings toward Link. In the moment Link was about to enter Zora's domain, he was hit by a shady guy who had just stolen Queen Auron of the Zora's smooth gem and caused the queen to bloat up and spread panic and despair among her Zora underlings. Seeing this, Link went after the thief and found out that the stolen gem had been sold to the carpet salesman, forcing Link to purchase it prior to bringing it back to Zora's domain. In an instant, the queen was back to her normal form, and as a gesture of gratitude to Link, she bestowed him the Zora Flippers. After obtaining the Pendant of Wisdom from the House of Gales, Link encountered a Zora underling who told him how he was out swimming with Queen Auron and was suddenly left behind. Obviously, the queen had been trapped into a painting by Yuga and kidnapped. It soon turned out that Queen Auron was one of the 7 sages, and this might imply that Princess Ruto from Ocarina of Time is a distant relative to the Sage of Water. Trapped deep inside the Swamp Palace, she was ultimately rescued by Link and took part in the ceremony where Link was granted the Triforce of Courage.
No other story references to the Zoras can be found in the Downfall timeline, but we know that the River Zoras were present as enemies in the original Legend of Zelda and inhabited all of the 3 bodies of water surrounding Death Mountain. The last reference of the Zoras in the Downfall timeline is found in The Adventure of Link, where the Zoras behave differently compared to other installments. They are found on river crossings, but most of them live within caves, deserts, and at Maze Island far away from their original water habitats. On top of this, they look different and move different, having a quadrupedal structure. After the final battle against Ganon, the Hero of Time was sent back to the past, in the process undoing the engagement to Princess Ruto among many other things, to warn Princess Zelda about the imposing threat of Ganondorf's planned coup d'etat. Fearing the worst, Link left Hyrule with the Ocarina of Time to locate his lost friend Navi and prevent Ganondorf from gaining access to the Sacred Realm and the Triforce.
After a long journey resulting in his forced arrival in Termina, the Hero of Time reached the Great Bay of Termina, where he encountered the lead guitarist of the Sea Zora band, Indiegogo, Mikau, who was about to die, failing in his mission to retrieve the Zora eggs for his love interest Lulu, who was in a deep state of depression. Seeing that Mikau's life could not be rescued, he played the Song of Healing, set up a memorial to the deceased Zora, and used the Zora mask to take his place in the Zora ranks, retrieve the eggs from the Gerudo pirates, and ultimately found a way into the Great Bay Temple to dispel the curse from the sea. Link practiced with the Indiegogo, and by rescuing the world from destruction, made it possible for the band to perform at the Carnival of Time. The Zora civilization of Termina differs from the other Zoras found in Hyrule, Labrina, and Holdorum. They are more technologically advanced with sophisticated building structures, high-quality entertainment, and even a writing system. Another thing we learned from the Zoras in Majora's Mask was how the race, just like fish in our own world, lay eggs in order to reproduce. In contrast to the Downfall timeline, the Zoras never left Hyrule in the Child timeline. Thus, they must have been involved at some point as tensions rose between the Gerudos, commanded by Ganondorf, and the Kingdom of Hyrule. Following Link's warning to Princess Zelda, and subsequently the King of Thieves' ambitions to ambush the castle and invade the Sacred Realm could not remain unanswered. In the end, a bloody conflict must have broken out, as obviously Ganondorf would not just hand himself in for a certain death by the hands of the Hyrulean royal family. With his tribe and minions, he therefore initiated an uprising against the Kingdom of Hyrule and her allies, marking the outbreak of the GERUDO-HYLIAN War. Knowing that the best defense is offense, Ganondorf launched a surprise attack on Castletown, caught the unprepared Hyrulean army by surprise, captured the town, sacked it, and forced its population to flee. The Zoras were forced to once and for all give up their peaceful way of life and militarize on a massive scale, crafting weapons and armor for their soldiers to support the Hyrulean war effort against Ganondorf and his minions. The remnants of the Hyrulean army which managed to escape instructed and introduced the Zoras to advanced sword and weapon techniques, teaching them how to craft different sorts of items such as bombs, and then repurposing them for underwater utilization and combat. In return, the Zoras donated an entire province above Zora's Fountain to the Knights, who over the course of the years made the mountain into the main headquarters for their order, marking the beginning of the golden age of Hyrulean knighthood. The combined effort turned the tide of war to the Coalition's favor and was ultimately concluded with the capture of Ganondorf and his botched execution in the rushed effort to banish him to the Twilight Realm.
Nonetheless, the Dark Forces had still not uttered their last words. With the powers granted by Ganondorf, the vengeful, self-proclaimed King of Twilight Zant launched an invasion on Hyrule. He stormed Hyrule Castle with his army of shadow beasts, forcing Princess Zelda to succumb and allow the kingdom to fall under the domain of Twilight. Despite the hopes for a peaceful resolution, the Zoras were not spared from this invasion and occupation, which resulted in the murder of the head of the Zora tribe, Queen Rutella. Caught in the middle of this incident was the Queen's son, Prince Rallis, who managed to escape from the domain right before the village was raided by Zant's brainwashed minions. He attempted to break his way to Hyrule Castle to plead Princess Zelda for assistance. Unfortunately, on the way to the castle, he was surrounded and ambushed by monsters, wounded, found by Aaliyah, and brought to safety at Telma's bar. Shortly after his arrival, the prince became seriously ill and lost his consciousness as a result of staying too long outside of water. The hero of Twilight in the form of a beast observed this and soon after headed for Lake Hylia, which had been completely drained following the freezing of Zora's domain. After a long climb and flight, Wolf, Link, and Midna made their way to Zora's domain, where they were faced with the horrific sight of the Zora soldiers caught under a thick layer of ice. Link acted immediately and used the melted volcanic rock from Death Mountain to crush the ice and free the Zoras trapped underneath it. Bearing witness to this great act of compassion, the deceased queen revealed herself to Wolf, Link, and Midna and requested him to rescue her son Prince Rallis. In return, she would grant him the protection of water, allowing Link to dive and breathe in deep water. After clearing out the Twilight from Zora's domain and returning to his Hylian form, Link headed straight back to Hyrule Castletown to aid Prince Rallis. And the moment Link entered Telma's bar, he was confronted by a racist Hylian doctor who was on his way out after denying to treat the Zora prince. Seeing no other way out of the situation, the prince was in dire need for immediate emergency transport to Kakariko village to be treated by the village shaman Renato. The queen stated her gratitude toward Link for bringing the prince to Kakariko, and informed that the village has for a long time been considered a sacred place for the Zora tribe, as this is where they take their eternal rest. She then went on to tell Link about how the deceased king created garments specifically for the chosen hero, garments that house the abilities of the Zora. Link told Prince Rallis about the terrible fate that had met his mother and that she wished for him to become a proud, strong leader of the Zora tribe. At first, the prince was reluctant of the thought spending his days next to his parents' grave, mourning their deaths. This caused Rotella to show up in one of his dreams, telling him how Link was destined to salvage Zora's domain and steer his fate. From this point on, the young prince aided Link, and after Link's victory over Ganondorf, returned to Zora's domain to claim the throne and become the new King of the Zoras.
Four Swords Adventures is an odd installment in the series, as several of its elements does not fit with the general conceptions of the Zelda timeline. Even so, two types of River Zoras live in this era in Hyrule. In most provinces, they are hostile towards the Links. The Green Zoras, on the other hand, are friendly towards Link. One example is when Link stumbles upon a Zora who lives in a pond north of Kakariko village. The Zora is hungry, but apparently is not able to catch fish himself. The four Links feed the hungry Zora and in return are rewarded. In the adult timeline, the hero of time defeated Ganon, was sent back to the past, leaving this timeline branch of Hyrule. But before we go any further, we need to return to the ending credits of Ocarina of Time. Here we can see King Zora with Mido mourning what they believe is the loss of their loved ones, Princess Ruto and Saria, which might or might not be true. Slowly the merits of the hero of time faded into legend, and when Ganondorf once again rose up, no new hero appeared and selected individuals ascended up to a new service in the Great Sea. We know for certain that the Zoras at some point evolved into the Rito, as both of them share the Zora Sapphire as their tribal symbol. The likely explanation for this connection is that Zora's domain was most likely sealed along with Hyrule. In other words, they simply had no other choice but to leave their homeland and accept the new conditions and find a new home. Jabun, the descendant of Lord Jabu Jabu, remained the tribe's main deity until they decided to part their ways and headed to what they believed would be their new homeland at Death Mountain. The Gorons, who inhabited the mountain, now turned island, soon realized the homeless Zora's true intention, to settle down, and likely took to arms to throw them out of the island by brute force. At this point, the descendant of the evil dragon, Volvagia, the sky spirit Valu, rose up and intervened, taking the Zoras under his defense, and forced the disgraced Gorons to leave their homeland for good. Grateful for the unexpected support, the Zoras renamed the island to Dragon Roost, adopted the dragon as their new sky deity, and over time, under his power, influence, and perhaps magic, changed from their half-fish, half-human form into a half-bird, half-human form, becoming the Rito tribe. Many years then passed until a new Link arrived at Dragon Roost Island and was escorted by Quill to the Rito headquarters in what most likely used to be Goron City and was introduced to the Rito chieftain. It seems despite the end of the traditional monarchy in form of kings, the Rito inherited the heraldic tradition of reign from their Zora ancestors. The chieftain promised learning about Link's quest, promised to aid him, but first needed to resolve a crisis surrounding their guardian spirit and deity Valu, Change of Mood, which had turned him violent and forced the Ritos to halt all attempts to send young ones up to acquire the scale needed for the Ritos to grow wings.
Upon solving this crisis for the chieftain by killing the incarnation of Goma and saving Medley from captivity, he convinced the chieftain's son Komali to show some bravery. When Link returned from the Dragon Roost cavern to the surface, Komali apologized to him for his rude behavior and gave Link Din's Pearl, a gift from his grandmother, saying that giving you the thing I value the most will give me the courage I need to stand up to bad things. Despite having a new deity, the Ritos did not forget about their other deity, Jabun, the descendant of Jabu Jabu. This is clearly visible when Link once again is reunited with Quill at Great Fish Island. He informed that the water spirit managed to escape before Ganondorf's attack on the island, implying that the Ritos might have assisted and planned the escape of their second deity in advance, and placed him in a safe cave at Outset Island. There, Link was finally bestowed Nehru's Pearl after Jabun had mistaken him for the Hero of Time. The Rito came to the aspiring hero's rescue after his failed standoff against Ganondorf at the Forsaken Fortress, where all seemed lost after the Master Sword had lost its power, when out of nowhere, Prince Komali and Quill showed up and flew Link and Tetra to safety, while Valoo heated things up by setting Ganondorf's hideout ablaze. The next time Link encountered the Rito, or more specifically its predecessor, was at the entrance to the Earth Temple. After learning the Earth God's lyric, the deceased spirit of the Zora sage Laruto appeared and introduced herself to Link. She told him that for an entire age, she offered her prayers in the Earth Temple that the powers to repel evil would ever remain within the Master Sword. And yet, due to Ganondorf's evil designs, the Master Sword you hold has lost its power. After his defeat at the hands of the Hero of Time, he was sealed away, but not for all time. He was revived, and he returned to Hyrule in a red wrath. He attacked his temple and stole my soul, knowing that he had to remove the power contained in that enchanted blade. Laruto then asked Link to locate her descendant. The only clues connecting her and Medli, who turned out to be Laruto's blood descendant, was the sacred instrument they were playing, and the symbol of the Zora Sapphire which they both have printed on their dress. The Earth God's lyric opened the eyes for the new sage, and through that melody carried the prayers to power the Master Sword of the Gods. Link played the song in front of Medli and awoke her, allowing Laruto to pass over the important message that she is the next sage of the Earth Temple. Link and Medli traveled as quickly as they could to the Earth Temple, and battled their way to make it possible for Medli to offer her prayers, and restore half of the needed power to restore the full splendor of the Master Sword. Unfortunately, as the power of the sword could only be maintained through prayer, Medli had to stay behind in the temple and continue her prayers. Link, Medli, and Komali are first reunited on the pirate ship after the final battle. Where Ganondorf was killed and turned into stone, Hyrule was flooded for good by the last king of Hyrule, ending all traces of the kingdom. After this, Link and Tetra set sail to find a new homeland, leaving the Great Sea and the Rito tribe, efficiently ending the presence of the Zoras and Rito in the adult timeline. Breath of the Wild's place in the Zelda timeline is a confusing one. It is not so subtly mentioned that the events of Skyward Sword, Ocarina of Time, and Twilight Princess took place ages ago, making sense that it takes place in the child timeline, but the Rito and Zoras are coexisting with each other despite the Rito being descendants of the Zoras in Wind Waker. That and the divine beast Vamedo is named after Medli, though it isn't strictly mentioned like Varuta's connection with Princess Ruto and Vanoboris's with Nabooru. The most popular theory being thrown around is that Breath of the Wild is set in a converged timeline, where the three split timelines come together to form a world where all the events from the previous games somehow happened. Nothing has been confirmed from Nintendo, and we won't know if it ever will. Regardless, the Zora are here, and they play a huge part in the defeat of Calamity Ganon.
When the threat of Calamity Ganon was nigh, King Rhoam-Bosphoramus Hyrule ordered archaeological expeditions around Hyrule to uncover the 4 divine beasts, which were ancient Sheikah technology used to defeat Calamity Ganon 10,000 years prior. The Zora found Divine Beast Vah-Ruta, named after the ancient princess and water sage Ruto. Chosen to pilot this divine beast was the Zora princess Mipha, daughter to King Dorephan, and sister to Prince Sidon. She, along with 3 other soldiers from different tribes, were dubbed the Champions of Hyrule, with her childhood friend and crush Link being Princess Zelda's royal knight. When Calamity Ganon finally struck Hyrule, she rushed to the divine beast, only to be slaughtered by Water Blight Ganon. The rest of the champions were also slain, leaving Link to be critically injured and placed in the Shrine of Resurrection. Zelda, now with her sealing powers unlocked, would spend the next 100 years fending off Calamity Ganon to protect the world from his malice. Mipha's death left all of Zora's domain devastated, and to honor her memory, they sent the light-scaled trident adrift down the Zora River. But then, Mipha's voice came from the trident saying, "The light-scaled trident and I are one. Abandon your grief and know joy once again. Do not cry, just remember." So every year on the day of the calamity, the Zora hold the Champion Festival to honor her sacrifice. Link finally awakened from the Shrine of Resurrection, and his journey to defeat Calamity Ganon and save Hyrule lead him to Zora's domain, where a corrupted divine beast, Vah Ruta, cursed the land with endless rainfall. It was there that he also met Prince Sidon, Mipha's brother and skilled warrior, quite possibly the strongest one next to his father, King Dorephan. It was with the help of these two individuals that Link was able to mount the divine beast, kill Waterblight Ganon, and clear the beast of its corruption. It was then that he encountered Mipha's spirit, who then gifted him with her power, Mipha's grace, to heal himself once he fell in battle. Piloted by Mipha's spirit, Vah Ruta perched itself on a mountain viewing Hyrule Castle, where it, along with the rest of the divine beasts, placed a crushing blow on Calamity Ganon, weakening him significantly. After the victorious battle against Ganon, Zelda and Link began their work on restoring Hyrule to its former glory, the first item on their list being a visit to Zora's domain to check up on divine beast Vah Ruta, which apparently stopped working. This will be a story for another time. And so concludes the vast history of the Zora race. We here at the Commonwealth Realm thank you for watching until the very end. We would also like to thank our Patreon supporters, including royal producers Transcendent Sacred Courage and Kenyatta Ali, for helping make possible this extensive timeline narrated by me, Jason Dameron, the Voice Overlord. If you'd like to support the channel for access to exclusive content, such as the Commonwealth Realm podcast, be sure to visit our Patreon page for more information. We hope you have a fabulous day, and we will see you in the next episode of the Commonwealth Realm.